Welcome everyone. I want to welcome everyone to the shir tonight about practical Shemittah and halacha and in thought. And I want to welcome Rabbanit Batya Krauss. Rabbanit Batya Krauss is a tremendous Talmidat Chachamim, a scholar. She teaches the Murot Halacha, our advanced leadership, halachic leadership program in Matan. She teaches Taharat HaMishpacha, and she teaches in Matan in general. And that's it. It's a great honor to welcome Batya Krauss. Batya, I'm handing over the microphone to you. Thank you, Batya.
Good evening. I always tell my students never to start by asking people's forgiveness for something, but usually I teach in Hebrew, so and my English is whatever, of an Israeli who grew up here, even though my parents are chutznikim. So any English mistakes or any language mistakes, I'm sorry about. When we thought to give a shir about Hilchot Shemittah, we thought, well, it's not that great of a topic. Not a lot of people are going to come, and 500 people signed up for this year, 60% in English and 40% in Hebrew. And it's an amazement to me that people actually want to come hear about Hilchot Shemittah. When we start talking, we can't start talking about halacha without saying some very, very important things about the Shemittah. Shemittah is a mitzvah d'oraita. It comes up at least 3 times in the Torah. It is one of the biggest places where we have a mitzvah of emunah, a mitzvah of believing in the Kadosh Baruch Hu. It is also a tremendous present. Now, every present that we get in this world costs us something, like there's no free meals, right? So, and wow, that came out well with Shemittah. It is obvious to us that when we're Shomer Shabbos, we get a tremendous present of the Shabbat. We get a Shabbat where we stop whatever it is we're doing. When we think about different things, when our family comes together, when we can learn Torah, when we can see other people and be part of the community. This is something that we take for granted, many of us, because many of us have been in the story of Shabbos for many, many years. And when we think or we hear about people who say, but you lose 1/7 of your income, we say, so what? So, and we know that modern society has taken to that place as well. There is no place in the world that doesn't think that Sabbath of some sort is important, and we gave it to Christianity, and we gave it to Islam, and we gave it to the modern world, even though sometimes I think maybe that's changing, but I really hope not. And most people understand the need for rest, understand the need for businesses to be closed, understand a need for a different pace. Well, Shemittah is a much bigger scale of Shabbat. It is a different, it's a full year of not working the land. It's a whole year of thinking about what the Kadosh Baruch Hu, what we're going to eat, how we're going to eat it, where are we going to find food, what are we going to do now? Today, we just figure we'll go to the refrigerator and we'll get whatever's in the refrigerator, and we'll get to our refrigerator soon. But in the olden days, if you didn't work the land, you had no refrigerator. And the idea that the Kadosh Baruch Hu was going to provide for the 6th and the 7th and the 8th year, only people who had a tremendous amount of belief, a very strong idea that God rules the world, could do that. And the idea that we aren't in charge of this world is still an idea that's true for today. Today, we think that we control everything. And maybe the most difficult thing for us is to relent our control and say, we are stopping. It is so very difficult for us to stop. And before we even start talking about the halacha in Shemittah, that might be easier today and maybe harder today, and very, very difficult for chaklaim, for people who do agriculture, and maybe difficult for the society at whole, we have to remember that this is a way for us to go back to the basics. It's a way for us to understand that there's a bigger entity that rules this world. And we are very little players. And it's a way for us to breathe, to take a breather from everything that we're running after and say that God is going to run for us. We don't have to run. And I wish for all of us to learn how to be here in the here and now, and learn how to use the Shemittah to take our lives into a safer place. Because if we believe that God provides, really believe that God provides, we can get to a safer place. I said something about agriculture. Look, most of the mitzvahs of Shemittah have to do with the land, have to do with the chakla'i, don't have to do with us. I hope we'll get to talk about our garden in the end, but what we have in our garden is on a low level, and we all have to remember that we're going to get up and go to work and Shemittah, and the chakla'i might not get up and be able to go to work the same way he does. And we have to remember that all for one and one for all, the chakla'im aren't in this by themselves. And I think that appreciating the burden that's been put on them is extremely important. When we go to the supermarket, and here I'm starting with halacha, we go to the supermarket, and let's say we go to a frum supermarket. There are all sorts different places where our food comes from. And we have to know what to do with our food that we bring home. So if most of our supermarkets up till this Shemittah, and Be'ezrat Hashem in this Shemittah as well, will use mostly heter mechira, which basically means that we make a contract with a non-Jew to lease our land. Not buy our land, it's lease our land. And then we can eat what was grown on this land without worrying about Shemittah at all. That is true to everyone but Rav Kook. Rav Kook said that you should do this, and this is the right thing to do for the chaklai, but if you do it, you should know that the produce that was grown on this land is still has Kedushat Shvi'it. Most people don't paskin by this idea, but you should know it exists. So if you come to somebody's house and they do have a Pach Shemittah, or they won't waste any fruits and vegetables, you should know why they do this, even though they are eating Heter Mechira. Another thing that is in the supermarket is Otzar Beit Din. Otzar Beit Din is a different halachic construction that basically says that Beit Din buys leases the land, or we give the land to Beit Din, and we can and because we do that, Beit Din can let the Jews work their land, and they will pay them what it costs them to work the land, and then they can sell. Beit Din will sell it to us. Okay, people who use Otzar Beit Din should know several things. First thing is that there is Kedushat Shvi'it, and all produce that is Otzar Beit Din. Most of the things would be fruits anyway, not vegetables. But some things that we say adama on them, like cherry tomatoes, could be Otzar Beit Din as well. As far as Otzar Beit Din is concerned, if Otzar Beit Din is very expensive, you're not allowed to buy it, okay? Because that means that something happened within the halachic process that went wrong. So as long as it's fair priced or low priced, you can use it. But if it's expensive, you should ask questions. The other thing one should know about Otzar Beit Din, if you're in Chutz La'aretz and you find Otzar Beit Din wine, not allowed to drink it. Otzar Beit Din wine, anyway, to most days, I'm not saying to all days, but to many days, you're not allowed to drink it, because you're not allowed to take the produce outside of Eretz Yisrael. So that's another thing to know about it. The other thing that you'll find in the supermarket is Yevul Nochri from a goy. There are two kinds of Yevul Nochri. One is things that were grown in Eretz Yisrael, and one are things that are imported in from Chutz La'aretz. You should know that a lot of our fruits and vegetables are imported in from Chutz La'aretz every single year. So to say I am not eating nochri is an interesting statement, because we eat nochri most years anyway. Nochri from Eretz Yisrael, you have to be wary about. You have to be wary about that. First of all, it was really the Nochri, the Goy's land, because if it's not the Goy's land, if he just worked it or he bought it from Tnuva and he says it's his land, then we still go into many, many Shemittah problems. The other thing about the Goy from Eretz Yisrael is we have to know, and that's true for Jews too, where in Eretz Yisrael it is. Because if we say that from the Arava to Eilat, it isn't in the boundaries of the Eretz HaMuftachat, then we don't have to worry about Shemitah there. We learned that, by the way, from the Gemara that talks about Surya not being part of Eretz Yisrael. There are two more things that you'll find in the supermarket. One is things that are grown on matzah menutak, meaning that like mushrooms that don't grow in the land or grow in warming houses and tables. That's one type of thing. And the other is hydroponic vegetables that grow in water. To most, not to all, but to most dayas, there's no problem and no Shemitah in things that don't grow on the ground. Okay, if we have something that has Kedushat Shvit on it, then what you have to do is let it turn, let it grow bad before you throw it out, because you're not allowed. The only thing you learn from the Midrash Halacha, the Midrash Halacha says, le'ochla velo le'ovda, to eat it and not lose it. Basically means that we wait for a minute, for a while, a day or two, till the fruit and vegetables turn. The fruit and vegetables can be according to the first day of the Yalkut Yosef. The Yalkut Yosef is the Rabbi Rashi of now, Rav Yitzchak Yosef. Basically, he says that you can put it in a bag and put it in the garbage right away. So people who do that are totally okay. Many people say that you should put it in a separate bag, in a separate garbage till it turns, and then only then put it in the garbage, not in the bag in the garbage right away. An interesting thing I read in the Yalkut Yosef says that if you want to be super frum, you'll have two garbages, one for one day and one for the next day. And you won't put anything in the Pach Shemittah that you ate today and yesterday's, because maybe yesterday started turning already and maybe there's Kedushat Shvit. I think there's no end to that. But it was very interesting for me to read. We have a Pach Shemittah in our house. Last Shemittah, we have a compost in our home all of the time. I asked if we can put Shemittah in the compost, and the answer is no. Why can't you put Shemittah? You can't put the fruit and vegetables right in the compost, because the compost is already fermenting. That's the whole point of the compost, and that would be considered le'ovda, even though I want to use that compost. So if you want to put it in the compost, wait a day or two and then throw it into the compost. The other interesting thing that one of my friends told me today that they have in Israel now is I'm not even sure what it's called, a tochen mazon. One of those things you used to, a food, you put it in the drain and it mushes it up and then puts it down into the sewage. So you shouldn't do that the first day either. Wait a day, make sure it starts to turn bad, and then you can do that. A garbage disposal. Thank you very much. As far as eating in other people's homes, anybody who is Shomer Shabbos is considered to be Shomer Kashrut. And we eat that's how we eat on day-to-day basis in other people's homes. As far as Shemitah goes, it's very important to remember that most of these halachas are on the person who raises and grows the fruit and the vegetables. And therefore, by the time it gets to us, it's already third or fourth or fifth hand, and there is and then there's a safek after safek of where these fruits and vegetables came from. And I think here actually there might be a bigger problem with not eating in someone's house, definitely somebody that's close to you, because the mitzvah is so far behind us already from the person who raised it, that I think we have to breathe deep and know that people are shomer halacha. We also can still say that most of what's grown in Israel is heter mechira anyway. And there's a question in halacha about ne'ebad. Basically something that you don't know where it grew or what it grew. So There are poskim who say that if you don't know where it grew, you can't eat it and you have to throw it out. But there are many, many who say that if you don't know where it grew, you can still eat it because most probably it's okay. A little different than that is the question of things that were grown in your garden. People who have a garden, I think it is okay to ask what you do in your garden. And I think this is a good time to move into talking a little bit about our home plants and our gardens. It's very, very difficult for a person who loves their garden not to work in the garden. It's very difficult to see a garden wilting. And therefore, we have to really think about what we can and what we can't do in the garden. Everything that can be done now, everything that can be done now should be done now. There is an issue of tosefet shvi'it for new trees. If anybody was planning on planting new trees now, they have to do it till Tu B'Av. Tu B'Av is a week from Shabbos. There's a question about Tetzayin B'Av. Some people say you can, some people say you can't, but it should really be done next week. The thing that you gain from doing it next week is you also gain a whole full year of Orla if it roots and in the ground for 30 days. So we say that's around 6 weeks. There's different days really, but the psak is for 6 weeks. Therefore, everybody who is going to plant new trees should do it now. Just fruit trees, not all trees. Different trees can be done till Erev Rosh Hashanah. You can't plant anything all year. So if you want to have seasonal flowers for the fall, you should do it now. If you want to get flowers that might flower later, you should do it now. What can and what else you can do now is fertilize. The only fertilizing we're going to do on Shemittah year is fertilizing that has to do with like medicine, that a tree or the grass won't die. It's very easy to understand. The Gemara says that anything that you do to maintain your garden, you can do, but anything that you want to do to develop your garden, you shouldn't do. So anything that you'd like to do, you should really do now. Somebody asked about flowers. Everything that you want to plant, you should plant till Erev Rosh Hashanah. Anything that's not trees. Trees, the only thing you have to plant now are trees. People who have vegetables growing in their garden, really, I didn't actually prepare to talk about vegetables, but should make sure that they're already planted and can use it. There's a question about sfichim, that what we do and don't do as far as vegetables go. So anything basically that's yours that I'm going to talk about window boxes and plants in a minute, but that's inside the house. I'm still talking about outside the house. What we have, anybody who has a vegetable patch should really ask their Rav or ask me later. There's some diukim that we should think about. Somebody asked what sfichim is. Sfichim are things that grow by themselves. And Shemittah, can we eat them or can't we eat them? And since I didn't, since most of us don't go out looking for berries and looking for our food outside, I'm gonna skip that for right now. And maybe if we have time later, I'll go back to that. The garden itself can be watered regularly. The Yalkut Yosef says that you really shouldn't water your garden in the winter time, but I don't know many people who do water their garden in the winter time. But if you need to, you can. What about weeds? Weeds in our garden, basically, if they bother us, we can take them out. Okay. And we shouldn't go looking for trouble, but if they bother us, the same thing about cutting down your trees. If you can, if the parsley is yours and it was, somebody asked about can they use the parsley that they grew, parsley that's yours and you grew in your garden and started growing before Shemittah, you can continue eating after Shemittah. Where was I? Oh, you can cut down your trees. Trees that you cut down that are fully grown, that you want to be a fence or something like that, or you cut them down in a pretty way, or any way you can cut down. The trees that you can't cut, the trees and plants that you can't cut down are bushes that aren't fully grown yet, and you're cutting them down so they can continue to grow. If they continue, if you're cutting them down to help them grow, you can't cut them down. Anything else you can cut down and make pretty. And it's true to fruit trees as well, as long as you're doing it because not to help the tree grow better persimmons. When I was a child, I live in a moshav, we had a persimmon orchard. You had to tie the trees down so they grew better persimmons. That's something that you can't do. But if you're cutting them down so they look good, or that they don't get too tall, or that they bother someone, that you can definitely do. When people who have mirpeset gardens, there's a big question about gardens on your mirpeset. If they're connected to the ground or aren't connected to the ground. And in halachic terms, it's called atzitz nakuv ve'atzitz lo nakuv. It's also a question if they're covered or not covered. If you're, so basically, if your mirpeset is a covered enclosed mirpeset, and you have a garden on your balcony, and you're on the 8th floor, and it's not considered mechubar lakarka, most people say that you can't plant anything, but you can basically tend to that garden the same way you tend to it at all times. There are people who say that even that is considered a garden. and you shouldn't do that. I know that for many of us, especially for many of the older people in the community, gardens are part of our occupational therapy. It's part of how we spend our time. It's part of our mental health. Anybody who thinks that the garden is part of their mental health can call me. I'll talk to them about what they can and what they can't do. Your mental health is very, very, very important. The other thing is about moving plants around. Inside the house, you can move your plants around however really you want. Outside of the house, if you're moving it around because you want to rearrange your garden is one thing. But if you're moving it around so that it gets more sun or less sun or anything like that, then it's a problem. It seems that many of us grow herbs on our windowsills or flowers on our windowsills. And there you should actually look at your windowsill and see if it's usually all these things have holes in them. And if they're on top of the ground, even if the ground is far away, they would still be considered an atzitz nakuv, and you could do on it only the things that I said before to keep it from dying or keep it healthy. It doesn't have to die. It doesn't even have to be close to dying, but and not to develop it. The preparing your soil for the year later can only be done after Shemittah. We don't do any preparations for the 8th year during Shemittah. Now, if you have lemons, and I'm talking about lemons because many of us have lemon trees. If you have lemons growing in your garden, who can eat them? Because we all know that part of Shemitah is shamot. It's to let it go. It's to make it hefker. It's to let anybody who wants eat from it. Now, there's a question if you have to do that. You have to say that these lemons are hefker, or the lemons are hefker anyway, if you want to or not. And basically, the Shulchan Aruch says there are people who disagree with him, but the Shulchan Aruch says that you have to put a sign up and say that these lemons are hefker, and anybody who wants to eat the lemon can go and pick a few lemons. How many is a few lemons? So they won't go bad. And obviously, he can't sell those lemons. Question is how much can we pick out of those lemons? And it basically seems that the Baal Habayit can't pick a tremendous amount of lemons and bring them in his house, because that would seem like he's trying to sell the lemons. So the Baal Habayit can only pick a little bit of lemons and bring them in each time. And people who come in to the garden can take a few lemons for their personal needs. We recommend people who have fruit trees to actually put up a sign like that. And you can also, when you put up the sign, say, and don't come between such and such hour, because it's because it bothers the neighbors. obviously, any fruit that was grown in our garden has Kedushat Shvi'it on it. And even if we buy Heter Mechira for anything else, these fruits are things that we have to worry about Kedushat Shvi'it. Do you take Trumot Masrot? You take Trumot Masrot, everything that was grown and everything that started blooming and Shishit. So you still take Trumot Masrot from those fruits till the fruit is out of season. And each fruit has a different time for that season. Many of the fruit will say around Hanukkah time, but you have to check on each one of the fruit. And we don't give Trumot Masrot on Shvi'it. There is a little bit of an argument about that, but basically most of us don't asking that you don't do Trumot Masrot on Shvi'it. Something else that has to do with our gardens. House plants inside the house we talked about. Wait. Okay. What happens in Isur Sfichim, I see we have some time, is there's a question if it's the question about Sfichim, is it Doraita or the Rabbanan? Now the interesting thing is that most of the Rambam says that it's from the Rabbanan, and if it's from the Rabbanan, then today we use Heter Mechira, then there wouldn't be any real problem with Sfichim. That's one of the reasons why I didn't go into it in the first place. When we talk about Sfichim, we only talk about food that, and not about plants that aren't food. Plants that aren't food wouldn't be considered Sfichim at all, even if somebody might eat them. There's also a question about livestock. Are there Sfichim in livestock or not? And there's a machloket between the Chazon Ish and the Rav Ovadia about that. And the Rav Ovadia says that there's no Isur Sfichim, and that's what we basically say today. The other thing about Sfichim is that it's only on a plot of land that is used for planting. Let's say I plant tomatoes there every year and the tomatoes grew there now, then I have a problem. But if I walk in the middle of the street where usually there's no tomato plant, and a tomato grew, there wouldn't be a problem with those tomatoes. I think that's enough for Isur Sfichim. I want to go back a little bit to Din Ne'evad, because I think that maybe we could go a little deeper into it. What happens when you, till when can we plant vegetables or herbs? Somebody just asked. You can plant them after Tu B'Av, just they have to be, I would say, a few days before, so they're in, that they already started rooting. But that's only from the Rabbanan. Midoraita, you can do them till Erev Rosh Hashanah. There's so much politics when it comes to Shemittah and what we do and what we don't do in Shemittah, that I really want to have people feel good about themselves and about what they're doing, because there is a shita after every one of the things that are done in Israel today. Anything that's done here today is to be able for us to have a normal economy that feeds a tremendous amount of people. And I think that it's important for us to know that each one of these shitas really stands. And you can use them all, you can use one of them, but you should feel comfortable about what you're doing. As far as growing things at home, it's trickier. And therefore, maybe everybody would want to ask privately. But basically, everything that we plant before the Shemitah, we can use on Shemitah. We can't help it grow on the Shemitah, but we can help it survive. And we can eat fruits and vegetables as well, that were cultivated through the beginning of Shemitah. We'll see people who only eat what they know where grew have a problem with vegetables sooner than later. I have family that will only eat what they know where grew, and what they grew, basically because of that, they grow things by themselves. So they'll have potatoes till a certain time in that year, and they'll have onions for a certain time that year, and they won't use the rest of the vegetables the other times a year till they come back the next year on Shemitah. Most of us can't do that. We don't have the ability, we don't know how to run our kitchen that way, and therefore we have to somech on all the hetarim that we have. I'm gonna look at these questions. I see there are many of them, to see if I can answer any of your questions. You can, so we did that one. Are we allowed to cook all fruits and vegetables on Shemitah? You can cook all fruits and vegetables on Shemitah. There is a question about making juice from fruits and vegetables that we usually don't juice. So the Yalkut Yosef says that today we juice carrots, and there's absolutely no problem in making carrot juice. So anything that you want to juice, anything that you want to cook, as long as you cook it to eat and not cook it for anything else but eating. There's a big question about making medicine, okay? It says le'ochla, so the only thing you can do with perot v'it is eat perot v'it. So we don't make medicine out of it. On the other hand, what you do normally with a fruit or a vegetable, you can continue doing normally. So if you make oils to use on your body, then you can make oil out of anything that you would use to what we call sicha, or you could make perfume, because that's what you do with certain, with those fruits and vegetables. You shouldn't use fruits and vegetables that you usually eat to do other things with, but cooking them to eat is absolutely no problem. The Hebrew University campus has fruit trees, berries. If I pick them and eat them, is that considered tzvichim? No, enjoy. Else? If we want to buy potted plants after Shemitah, how do we know when and if we can? You should ask, anybody who wants to buy plants after Shemitah should ask them when, should ask them how long it took these plants to grow. Okay, if you're going to buy an orange tree that's 3 years old, you have no problem buying that orange tree. If you buy an orange tree that's 6 months old, you have a problem buying that orange tree. That's a good question. Thank you for bringing it up. I was so worried that I wouldn't have enough time that I got it all into less time than I thought I needed, which is interesting. The next time I'm gonna bring more mekorot in into this. I do want to bring you at this point the reasons that Sefer HaChinuch brings as far as why we, even before that. Shemitah, we haven't had the honor of doing Shemitah for that many years. But Shemitah basically came back when enough people came back to Eretz Israel. We still say that Shemitah is the Rabbanan and not the Oraita, because most of Israel isn't here, and because there's no Yovel, and because of other reasons. And we don't know when that's going to change or if it's going to change. But the whole idea of doing Shemitah in Eretz Israel is such a new thing that not many people wrote about it. And I want to say a few things about who did write about it. So the Rambam, who wrote about everything, thank God, gives us most of our guidelines on Shemitah. There are some tshuvas that we have from the Mabit and from the Shulchan Aruch, not too many. There we have from the beginning of the 20th century, two major Gdolim that wrote two very, very important books on Shemitah. One is the Rav Kook, and the other one is the Chazon Ish. Both of them understood that there was a different society and different economics, and that we had to find good ways of working with the Shemitah so we can feed all the people that came to Eretz Israel. It is the differences between them, by the way, are not differences of one Mekel and one Machmir. It doesn't work that way. Rav Kook is very machmir on certain things, and the Chazon Ish is very machmir about other things. And I urge you to join the shiurim in Matan and Shemitah to learn the differences between them. Now we have, like I said, Rav Rimon, who just put out a book that I recommend that people look at. There's the Yalkut Yosef of Rav Yitzchak Yosef that we use as well. it seems to me that one of the more important people who talked about the Shemittah and the reasons for the Shemittah is the Sefer HaChinuch. And the Sefer HaChinuch brings a few very, very interesting reasons that I think we should look at. So one we talked about in the beginning, is the strengthening the midah of the bitachon b'kadosh baruch hu. But there are other, and he talks about learning how to use midat vatranut, learning how to relent and not think that everything that happens should happen the way you want it to happen, and to know how to let go. So many of us, it's so hard for us to just let go. And letting go is very interesting because he says that you are able, one is able to become more charitable if they know how to let go. One of the reasons he brings is for helping the poor. And if we're all come to be poor or poorer in a way on the Shemittah, then we can learn how to help each other. And that's one thing that I think that we can do on this Shemittah, definitely after Corona. Many of us learned in Corona how to turn for help. People who never, ever needed help, come and get help now and want to need help now. And we have to find ways to open our hearts and to learn how to help them. So we did that on the Shishit this year, and I hope that it continues to the Sheminit, so we will be able to learn how to help each other and learn how to say, it is okay not to be fully in charge. Thank you. Thank you for joining me. Any more questions? Oshra, you want to open everybody's microphones?
בתיה, אני חושבת שמי שרצה לשאול שאל יפה בצ'אט.
טוב, בסדר? לא. אוקיי, thank you.
תודה רבה.
תודה לכם, ביי. טוב, ברבע האחרון נסתבך.
שימי מיוט. לא, אל תוריד את המילה.